Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you here on Wednesday, day 13 of 15 here training camp. 13 practices in 15 days. Now it is preseason time. So the Browns will next take the field. They'll have a walkthrough on Friday in Chicago. They're going to leave a day early and fly to Chicago on Thursday. They'll have a walkthrough on Friday. And finally, Mary Kay, a preseason game on Saturday against the Bears, 1 o'clock Eastern time here. And we know who the starting quarterback is going to be. So Todd Monken, through a team spokesman, announced today that Deshaun Watson will start this game against Chicago. And then, as expected, he's going to flip it against Buffalo in week 2 at home. So Shedeur Sanders will start that game. Deshaun's going to play about a half. That's what we have been promised by Todd Monken. And then Shedeur Sanders will play the third quarter of this football game. So we have a quarterback plan, Mary Kay. It's about what we expected. But I know that you think it's significant that Deshaun Watson was picked here to be the starter in this first game.
I do think it's significant. I think the person that you choose to start the first preseason game has the edge to be your starter in the regular season. Again, I could be wrong about that because we know it's still a competition. We know that Shedeur is going to start against the Bills. We know that they have that very important joint practice coming up, although there's a lot of importance being put on that one joint practice, but we know they have that coming up. But I do still think that this means that Deshaun has earned that first start and that he still is in the lead. And I sort of feel like it's his job to lose. If anything, he's 1 and Shedeur is 1A right now. And that's probably because of experience, wisdom, ability to handle the cadences and all the crazy things that are going to happen with a brand new offense, new offensive line, new receivers. It's going to take a lot. And I think you need someone who can really handle all of that stuff.
So here's part of why I agree with you on this. And because I was thinking about this, and this has sort of been the theme of the last week here with Todd Monken. He always sort of reserves the right to change his mind. And we've seen him change his mind a couple times, very famously last Saturday. The thing I keep coming back to is, let's say Deshaun looks great on Saturday. And let's say he looks really good next week and looks really good in the joint practice against Buffalo. I know he has already said, Ashley, that Shedeur Sanders will start next Saturday against Buffalo. And I do believe him. And I think it's most likely that that will happen. But the fact that Deshaun is getting this start, and the fact that we know that Todd Monken always reserves the right to change his mind, it does at least set the table for him if he decides to pivot to say, you know what, I do think we've seen enough, and we're just going to call this quarterback competition, maybe even before we get to Saturday's game. I don't think that's likely right now, but I think that's part of why I agree with Mary Kay here, that I think it is very significant that he chose Deshaun first.
Yeah, and I want to build on something else Mary Kay said, because I just said this in my short video I did too, but I just keep thinking about the fact every time we talk to Deshaun Watson, he makes it a point to say so much of what they're doing with these cadences, with the pre-snap motion, is similar to what he first learned when he came into the league and was playing in that Bill O'Brien offense in Houston. So this is somebody who has years of experience, not playing in this exact system, but playing in one that's a heck of a lot like it. And there is a lot to manage, and he can do that managing just because he's done it before. And that's not a knock on Shedeur or saying like, oh, he's not where he should be with that stuff. He's just doing it against a veteran who has done it. I bring it up all the time. The fact that Joe Flacco got off his couch and played all those games in 2023, because when you've done it for that long, certain things are just second nature to you.
Yeah, I mean, Deshaun just has so much of that experience. And he's mentioned the Bill O'Brien, of course, worked with Tom Brady, and that is kind of the system he's rooted in that he came into the league in. And I think that's important because, to Ashley's point, Mary Kay, like Todd is the same way. He wants to put a lot on the quarterback's plate. And then when you factor in Deshaun's mobility and the fact that he just came from Lamar Jackson and all of that, so much of this is pointed to him being, I think back when Todd got hired, we talked about he's got to be intrigued by this guy. He even admitted as much. He's got to be at least intrigued by what Deshaun maybe could be, or what's left there of Deshaun Watson because of where he's come from, and all those clips of him talking about the scramble drills and quarterback mobility and all of that stuff. And I think we're starting to see that in real time. And we know that coaches in general are going to lean towards I actually heard an interview with Mike Sando this week, who does the quarterback tiers, and he talks to GMs and coaches. And one of the things he said is he finds the coaches tend to lean towards, and this is what you would think, guys who kind of just have a better grasp on things, and guys who just more veteran guys, and guys who they know they can trust with a little bit more. That is not a knock on Shedeur Sanders. But at this point, it feels like Deshaun Watson is more advanced, and that's every indication we're getting. And so I think a veteran guy like Todd Monken is going to lean in that direction when it comes to that competition.
Right. Especially because of the fact that Todd Monken, almost more so than any other coach that I've been around, abhors sloppy, or what he calls crappy, stronger word, football. He hates it. He hates mistakes. He hates cadence issues and those kinds of things. And not saying that Shedeur is responsible for all of that, but Deshaun can probably get them out of a bad situation a little bit quicker right now than Shedeur can. Shedeur is still getting a grasp on the whole pre-snap operation and all the things that entails. And in this particular offense, QB control is paramount. That is the kind of offense that Todd Monken likes to run. It's what he just got done doing with Lamar Jackson, and it's exactly what Deshaun Watson did under Bill O'Brien. It's the Tom Brady way of doing things. Of course, Bill O'Brien was in New England with Tom Brady, and you put the ball in the quarterback's hands, and he is the point guard, and he runs the complete show. That's what Todd likes to do with this quarterback. Now, there's going to come a point where Shedeur can do that. He's getting it. He's learning it. Everybody's impressed. He's coming up the learning curve, and he's made a ton of plays in this camp. He really has. He had a beautiful ball today to Isaiah Bond on the sideline, that in the 2-minute drill that set up the game-winning field goal. And he's done a really, really nice job, and he's doing great. But just in terms of Todd Monken throwing somebody out there that can manage the game the way that he needs it to be managed right now, with everybody being so new, I think you skew towards a veteran with that.
And I just think when we're standing out here watching these practices, the way they're running these things, and that sense of it. And Ashley, we've just heard 2 days in a row here about this 8 seconds, right? Trying to find these 8 seconds, the 4-2s, I think is what they call it, where they do shorter play calls and they want to get in the huddle as efficiently as possible, get out as efficiently as possible, all of that stuff to save 8 seconds to reduce stress on the quarterback and the O-line and everybody at the line of scrimmage. That's part of it. We're out here watching these practices where they're running that play clock. Like, there were times that not just Kevin, but other coaches here where it's the play clock is kind of here and they use it sometimes and then they kind of reset it. But no, that thing goes to 40 and it starts running and Todd's on the radio calling in the play. They are practicing game-like situations. And so there is a real urgency from Todd Monken to have this team ready to play real football games when they get out there on September 13th. And again, I think that's why right now it's realistic that he would lean towards a veteran guy who knows all of those other things. And it's vital, too, that Deshaun Watson has shown those signs of life, that he's not still throwing everything into the ground and missing the layups like he was early in camp. It's a big part of this is over the last week or so, he's kind of done his part, and he's started to look more and more like a guy who can be out there playing quarterback in the league again.
Yeah, and I just keep thinking with Deshaun, and maybe part of the argument to start him first, I really do think as quickly as possible, you need an answer on what he is going to look like when the threat of actually being hit is there. I do think that is a huge, huge thing. And especially because when you look at his film in 2024, it did not look so good in that regard. And he was getting rattled in some of those other seasons here where his footwork was being impacted. Like all of these things we've seen happen with him. So I do think you want confirmation of, okay, these issues look better, or okay, no, they don't. And now that's a factor we're going to have to consider here. And Shedeur Sanders today talked about being hit as well, and kind of made the joke of, well, anyone who saw me play in college knows how much I got hit, knows how much I got sacked. It doesn't really impact me anymore. So they kind of have an answer for that with Shedeur already. But I do think after almost 2 years, you need to get another look at Deshaun Watson in that regard.
Yeah, well, both of these guys been hit a ton. If you kind of look over their careers, Shedeur in college and then, of course, Deshaun when he was in Houston took a bunch of hits. So that is another big piece of this, Mary Kay, is we still need to make sure, and The Browns need to make sure that Deshaun Watson can hold up physically because of the injuries he's dealt with. And we just don't know for certain how that's going to look. And we might not find out in a preseason, in 30 minutes of preseason football. We might have to get to, real games where, again, he's getting game planned for and he's really getting hit. I mean, in preseason games, yes, you're going to get hit, but it's not like in the regular season. And the speed is not like it is in the regular season. So we won't get all the answers, but I think that is a key point in this is we've got to see how Deshaun handles playing real football again, because it's, he posts all the workout videos and we can do all the stuff out here and whatever, but until you're allowed to actually get hit again, what's saying you don't know how you're going to do in a fight until you get punched in the mouth or something. Like, that's how it is in football. We don't know how Deshaun's going to hold up until he can get hit again.
Right. Or how his body is going to hold up, even if it doesn't get hit. Because with these Achilles ruptures, generally, you're not getting hit. It's a lot of non-contact with Achilles.
You're avoiding hits.
Yeah. You're avoiding hits, right? So his body just has to hold up. And that's what they have to see. How does he handle all of that? There are other things that they are going to need to see from Deshaun as well, including how is he going to handle the Shedeur phenomenon and the potential boos towards him at the stadium. I think that's another key hurdle that he's going to have to cross. But I do think that it will be key for them to see how he does when he gets back out there and actually has to face some contact, face that live rush, and see what kind of confidence he can play with. Now, I think it will help him tremendously that he has an offense that is suited to him. That's important. And I think that might be one of the reasons why Todd is even here, because he's just that good with this kind of quarterback. And I just think that it really gives Deshaun an opportunity to look much better than he's ever looked in a Cleveland Browns uniform. And the skill players are better. The skill players are so much better. Those rookie receivers, let's see how ready they are for the big time. But they have added a lot to this receiving corps. And then Harold Fannin Jr., he's still kind of coming back a little bit, but when he's out there with that receiving corps, I think there are a lot of weapons out there now.
Yeah, and we saw it on the depth chart yesterday, but also today, the very first play from scrimmage, it was Shedeur at quarterback, but very first play was 11 personnel. And so I think we're going to see, just because of how the roster's built, Ashley, this is going to be a very heavy 11 personnel team. I mean, how much are you going to really effort getting Blake Whiteheart on the field? Nothing against Blake Whiteheart, but I'm just like, you want to have your receivers out there. You want to have Harold Fannin out there, obviously. So I think we're going to see a lot more 3-4 receiver sets than maybe we saw with Kevin when he had Harold and David last year, and some other possibilities at the tight end position before. So I think we know that suits Deshaun very well, because that's a lot of what he did in Houston as well.
Yeah, and I think what's going to allow them to do that is the way that these rookie receivers have come on so strongly in camp. I think I mentioned it yesterday on the pod, but it did stick with me yesterday how Travis Schweitzer, the offensive coordinator, talked about with those guys, they don't need to rep something 10 times. Like, they're very quick learners, and a lot of times with rookies, that isn't the case. And that's okay. Like, everyone learns differently. And for a lot of these guys, it's about doing the thing over and over again and getting that muscle memory. Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston haven't really needed that so far. They're picking up things very quickly. And I think, as we also talked about yesterday, this conversation might be a little different if Joe Royer was here, but him not being here, if they wanted him to be involved in this offense, I think they may have given him a chance and maybe gone to more of those 12 personnel looks with him here. But now you're kind of at a point where even if he does return soon, he's missed a lot of camp. Yeah. So that's going to be very, very difficult, I think, to accomplish, at least early in the season.
And not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think, certainly on Saturday, we'll get to see some of their personnel groupings. They aren't going to show a ton, but even against the Bills, we're going to get to see them mix in some different personnel groupings and see how they will attack a defense that they're not used to and defense they haven't seen before. So these are two very interesting days, I think, to sort of figure out exactly what this team wants to do offensively, even if they aren't going to show us everything, of course. So as we get into this, Mary Kay, as we get to this first preseason game and really this next checkpoint in this quarterback battle, we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about, at some point you got to just name your starter and get your best 11 out there. But kind of barring that, How do you think Todd has handled this quarterback competition so far?
I think he's handled it pretty well, but you guys know that I have been on the bandwagon of getting the starting 11 working together a long, long time ago. And I think in the final analysis, if it turns out to be Deshaun, I sort of feel like, that they could have gotten him more time with all of these receivers. All of the two spotting and all of the alternating and all of that didn't lend itself to developing that timing and chemistry that you get when you are just practicing over and over and over again with the guys that you're going to be playing in the game with. And I've seen a lot of quarterback competitions around here lately. And when you don't have that cohesive unit working together throughout training camp, it doesn't look good in the beginning. And are you really going to then pin that on the quarterback that, hey, he didn't have his timing down? Well, why do you think he didn't have his timing down? Because he didn't get a chance to rep it over and over and over. These guys haven't worked together in this new offense. And again, there's new terminology. Everybody's going to be thinking half the time they're lining up wrong, right? I mean, there are going to be problems and growing pains. And I think that they've let it go too long. I think you kind of know in probably the first week of camp who is going to give you the best chance to win on September 13th. And if they knew that back then they should have called it back then. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Shedeur is going to give them the best chance to win right from the jump. And this was the way to play this out. But I just can't help but feeling that it was a setback for the first team offense.
I do think, to Todd's credit, one of the things he has said over and over again, and we've gone from praising Todd for his communication to being a little critical over the last week with some hiccups. But that said, one of the ththings he has said over and over again is he's not going to make this decision. The players are going to make this decision. And we talked a little bit about it coming out of the spring, Ashley, how he didn't let himself get backed in a corner. He wanted to have a decision at one point before the spring was over or after the spring, but it just wasn't there for him to make. And I feel like that's sort of where he is right now. Now, it might be starting to swing a certain way based on what we talked about earlier with who he named as his starter for this first preseason game, but he seems to be sticking true to his word that he's going to make this decision when a player basically makes it for him. Now, if it's September 12th, he's going to have to make a decision, and hopefully that won't be the case. That would be really bad for this offense. But I do think he has been true to his word that the players are going to decide this. And so far, obviously, no one has just outright convinced him that he should name his guy right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because, I appreciate the malleability, but I just keep thinking that. Because, there's a world where a quarterback competition could go on in perpetuity if you wanted to get crazy with it. And then we're talking about competing each week and splitting reps. And that wouldn't be good because at the end of the day, the head coach does have to make a decision, is my pushback to Todd Monken on that point. You do have to make that call. That's why you are in the role that you are in. And I do think you are better served making that decision sooner rather than later. You just have to go with a decision at some point and get that offense together. It's what we've been saying. It's what they failed to do, I think, last year. They kind of putzed around and then injuries got in the way. And then things were pretty bad from the jump. So I don't know. I think we'll see how this all ultimately plays out. Obviously, I still am of the mind we're going to probably see both these guys at some point this year, this regular season, just the way things have gone here in recent years, given Deshaun Watson's injury history, given the fact that I do think they want to see Shedeur Sanders in some of these game situations too. But I still think for those reasons, you're better served making a decision sooner rather than later.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, in their defense on that, Deshaun Watson got off to a rocky start in this game.
Yeah.
And he did not seize the moment.
No.
In his first 4 days of camp, he threw 6 interceptions. He did not have any confidence or continuity. He was not making completions, and Shedeur looked better in that first week. And it wasn't until day 7, and now we're on day 13. It wasn't until day 7 where Deshaun Watson really stepped up and seized the moment and kind of reclaimed the momentum. So I kind of can get and see where they couldn't really call it too early.
Yeah, and also on top of that, he really kind of lost momentum in the spring too, towards the end. So it was really a combination of those things that kind of led us to this point. And look, I think we're probably going to see assuming Dylan Gabriel's still on the roster, I think we're going to see all three of these quarterbacks at some point this season. I think we've seen over the years that's sort of what happens in the NFL just in general. But to go back to what we talked about yesterday, to what you were saying, Mary Kay, I was thinking about this while you guys were both talking. Trevor Lawrence out there taking all these first team reps. Baker Mayfield is taking all these first team reps.
Yep.
I can't recall if Bryce Young has been healthy or not. I know everybody in Carolina is getting hurt, but Aaron Rodgers is taking all those first team reps. So these teams you're playing early, not only have a lot of these teams been together, and have relative stability. I know things are a little up and down in Tampa right now, but you've got relative stability with a lot of these teams. And these quarterbacks are out there getting all these reps with these guys. So you are automatically behind the eight ball when you go against these teams, if you've been out here splitting reps and not having your guy really getting used to what it is to play with these rookie receivers and play with this new line. And this is a whole new offense and a whole new set of playmakers and linemen. And there's a lot of new here. And you're going against teams that have some relative stability, especially week one Jacksonville. They've got a ton of stability. So that is already a disadvantage.
It really is. And you can see that other teams like the Vikings, they've called their quarterback competition because it really is time. And even next week, and Ashley, you made this point yesterday very strongly, that joint practice is vitally important.
Maybe too strongly. I felt very strongly about the joint practice yesterday.
But it is important.
Yeah.
That is very important. And if you're splitting up the first team reps in that, then you're putting yourself even further behind the eight ball. I don't think they should do that either next week. Give Deshaun those reps and then let Shedeur go out and start the game against the Bills and get that whole first half. But if you really think right now that Deshaun is probably going to be your starting quarterback, then you have to give him those reps. You have to do that, and you have to give him as much time as he can get even next week with the starters on this football team. Time is a wasting. I think time has been a wasting since April. And as you mentioned, look at what everybody else is doing. Do you see anybody else alternating quarterbacks right now? And do you see anybody else doing that when they have, like you said, a brand new scheme and a brand new offensive line? 5 new guys trying to work together that haven't even worked together out on the field here yet.
Yeah, and then, look, I can understand how they've gotten to this point. I can understand them starting this thing off by saying, because they had no idea what Deshaun was going to look like. They had, and they did see Shedeur. I mean, the default probably would have been to start Shedeur Sanders because he started the last 7 games of the season, right? And they had no idea what Deshaun was going to look like. But at some point, you did start to get an idea of what he looked like, that he was healthy. You already kind of knew what Shedeur was. I mean, at some point, they could have just kind of said, okay, this is going to be our plan moving forward. And here we are 2 weeks in. We're going to go into our second full week next week. We've said it a million times. Time's a wasting, right? 4 practices next week with the joint practice. And then you got a Thursday night game. And then you've got to start making cuts. And it gets late fast. And we're going to start to feel that, I think, next week. And I'm with both of you on this. Splitting reps into joint practice doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I mean, it truly at that point, I'm like, just don't even do the joint practice if that's what you're going to do, because I don't think either guy or group is going to get enough reps to make it useful. I think that's maybe why I felt so strongly about it yesterday. But no, I mean, I just keep thinking these quarterback competitions, they just always seem to drag on here, and they don't really seem to drag on anywhere else. And I wonder if that's a correlation between some certain things that ultimately happen in the regular season, because I mean, for as much as we say there's only so much you can get out of, non-contact practices and practices when the pads aren't on, these practices cumulatively still matter a whole heck of a lot. And when you're not utilizing it with your best offensive group, repping and repping and repping and going at it every single day in back-to-back days and back-to-back periods and building, you're just not using it to your ultimate advantage, I don't think.
And let me just say real quick, I think it's a credit to Shedeur Sanders that he has kept himself in this competition. He came up off the mat. He was not ready to run the operation at the line of scrimmage in the voluntary mini camp in April. He was not ready to do that yet. And he got pulled out of a couple of drills working with the first team because he just didn't demonstrate that he was on top of everything at that point. And he got it turned around after that. And he really went to work. And he rose to the occasion, and he's met the challenge every single time he's been faced with it. When they took his first team reps away from him on Saturday, he went out there and with all guns blazing, he stepped up there in 11 on 11s and fired 3 straight really nice passes. He went out there today. It was
Had a great day today.
He had a great day today. It was a non-padded practice. But he went out there today and made some really nice throws, including just a beautiful deep ball to Isaiah Bond down the left side in the 2-minute drill to set up the game-winning field goal. He had other really nice passes, one to Jerry Jeudy. It was dropped by Jerry, but he put it where only Jerry should have been able to catch it. And he really, really had a very nice practice. And his accuracy has been outstanding. However, I mean, it's weird because we see the ball sort of fluttering. I even asked him today, is it true that you have a blister? And he said, that is not an issue right now. That's not an excuse. That has nothing to do with anything. Somehow the ball doesn't look beautiful getting there, but it's still arriving. It's still going where he wants it to go. Somehow it gets there miraculously. After we look back at some of these clips, we're like, huh?
Yeah.
That didn't look like he probably wanted it to look, but it's getting there. He's getting the job done, and he is not backing down in this competition, and you have to give him credit for that.
Well, and I'll say this too, like we frame the argument about just naming your starter. We frame it with Deshaun Watson because I think we all feel like that's where this is leaning right now. But I think that it applies to Shedeur Sanders too.
Yeah.
So if Todd Monken is sitting in his office right now thinking, you guys are wrong, I like Shedeur Sanders and I want him to be the starter. Okay, fine. Then name Shedeur Sanders the starter. We talk about Deshaun in that sense just because, like I said, that's where it feels like this is going. But if we're misreading that, or if Todd has some epiphany and decides to go a different direction all of a sudden, it's the same thing. Like if it's going to be Shedeur, name Shedeur. If it's going to be Taylon Green, if it's going to be Spencer Fano, I don't know, whoever, just name the guy and let him start getting his work in. It's not just a Deshaun thing. It's just because it feels like it's leaning towards Deshaun Watson right now.
Well, I, for one, would at least be curious to see a practice in which Spencer Fano is taking quarterback reps.
You would be up for it.
Yeah. No, but that is like the ultimate point. I think it's almost like making that argument for naming the starter. It's almost less for me about the people involved and more about the practicality of like life in the NFL and how important it is to just identify that person. If Todd Monken thinks it's Shedeur Sanders, great. But Shedeur Sanders, I would argue, would then be better served by starting this preseason game, would be better served by getting all the reps in joint practice. Like those are the kind of things that we are talking about to set your starter up for success. And I think that's what's important.
And the other thing about this is things could change on a dime next week. What if Deshaun goes out, gets a half in this game and doesn't play well at all? And it just doesn't go the way they think it's going to go. And he throws 2 interceptions and things just look rough. And then they get to next week and Shedeur just has a much better week and then goes out and even in his third quarter against the Bears, lights it up. And then he goes out against the Bills and looks really, really good. So this could shift. It really isn't over yet in their minds. It's really not. And I think that there, again, are still some hurdles to cross. And one of those, as I mentioned before, is the very important one of how is Deshaun Watson going to handle the noise? And I literally mean the noise in this case, because it could be very difficult for him to function at Huntington Bank Field, where those fans are going to be cheering and calling for Shedeur Sanders. We saw it happen to Dylan Gabriel plenty of times last year. There will be signs, there will be yells, there will be cheers. And conversely, Deshaun probably will be getting booed by some. So they have to see how he can handle that mentally. I don't think it's going to change their minds, just the fact that it's happening, but he's got to be able to prove that it doesn't rattle him to the point where he can't play good football. So I think that's a key to look for next week.
Okay, there we go. We have a preseason starter. There's been a lot of hype around who's going to start this preseason game. This is a very Browns quarterback competition to this point. Of course, we will cover it all at cleveland.com/Browns. We'll try to get another pod to you before the game on Saturday. So just get subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your pods, so that will hit your feed as soon as we hit publish on it, if we are able to get one in. Of course, you can watch our pods on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. That is the channel. All of your socials as well. Look for Orange and Brown Talk. Give us a like, give us a follow. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.